Hi, I'm Amanda Morale, Personal Finance Editor with Interest.co.nz, and welcome to Take an Interest in Your KiwiSaver, brought to you in association by AMP. I'm joined today by John Boddy, who's the Managing Director of ANZ Wealth. Welcome back, John.
Thank you, Amanda.
So a big monumental time for KiwiSaver. We've got in July next month the first period where the first round of eligible KiwiSavers will be able to draw down on their funds. We've also got KiwiSaver approaching the 2 million mark, and that we're expected to hit that in October. And we're now at $12 billion in KiwiSaver, which is 41% of all the retail funds out there. So some major milestones have been crossed here. Demographics, you've suggested, are one reason why we're also seeing some success in KiwiSaver. So tell me a little bit about that. We've seen a sort of a transition from the start of KiwiSaver to now in terms of the distribution.
Yeah, we've had a look at the KiwiSaver population that's with us, and we compared that to the investor population we had in retail funds 5 years ago. And the shift is really interesting in that we've gone from being dominated almost exclusively by middle-aged to 50-year-oldish male saver, to a saving population now reflects New Zealand in general. It's younger. The average age of our investors is 34. It's 52% women and 48% men, so it's more equally spread. So it's been a combination of a broadening of the gender, but also a younger saving population as obviously people start to sign for KiwiSaver earlier. So it's a good trend.
So do you attribute that to mainly people being drawn in through the workforce, or is there just a greater awareness out there, particularly among women, about the need for them to save for their retirement futures? Or
I think a big part of it's accessibility. So previously, if you think about how the managed fund industry worked pre-KiwiSaver, generally it would be people who had accumulated a lump sum and then they come along to an advisor or come direct to a bank or a fund manager and say, I want to give you a lump sum. Now the fact that KiwiSaver you can start with zero and then slowly build up the investment means anybody can invest in it. There's no barrier to entry. So I think that's been a really big part of it. And I think the second thing has been that it's a workplace-based scheme, and you generally, when you start work, you end up in KiwiSaver. So it's that combination of the accessibility plus the link to your employment.
Excellent. So what is now the average amount that a KiwiSaver is holding in their account?
Yeah, it varies. So with the average of the $40,000 average employers, if you've been earning $40,000, you've been for 5 years, you can have about $13,000 in your KiwiSaver account. Yeah,
that's impressive. Now, you often hear that the tipping point for people taking a greater interest in their retirement savings is when it reaches about the level of a small car. So we're getting close to that. Are you seeing a higher level of engagement and interest among your members?
Yeah, certainly we noticed in the last couple of weeks when we sent out the annual statements, a lot more phone calls than we'd ever got historically, people asking about their balance, about their investment, about performance, about other things. So certainly when you open up your KiwiSaver statement and it says $13,000, you start to take an interest, whereas in the past it's been $1,000 or $2,000, or it's just been the kind of the government kickstart. But yeah, definitely greater interest, and the parallel to that is the greater interest in the media. We've seen clearly retirement savings are on the agenda and people are interested in hearing the debates.
What more do you think people need to do to educate themselves about their KiwiSaver? We still do have a large number of people sitting in default funds. That's arguably actually not a bad place to be right now, but maybe going forward. Where do you see the the need to kind of grow people's knowledge levels?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that we really need to focus on. The first one really is around what do I need once I retire? So what are my expectations? And then work backwards from that to say, how much of a lump sum do I need to have accumulated in 10, 20, 30 years, whenever retirement is, to have a sufficient lifestyle on top of superannuation? And the second one really is this understanding of what does it mean to be in a conservative fund for 40 years? What is the risk of doing that? What are the benefits of doing that? So having people actually, when they get their statements, look at the asset allocation that you get provided and saying, is that suitable to me? And then having accessibility through our website or through the Retirement Commissioner's website to start to educate about where my investments are and what that means and what I'm going to end up with at retirement.
There's been quite a few number of surveys done recently. Yours included about people, the findings showing that people are very insecure about their retirement futures, that they haven't saved enough money, that they don't know how much money they need to save. So obviously we've got a good start with KiwiSaver, but quite a long way to go for some folk out there.
Yeah, and we were surprised at when we did our confidence survey that it was roughly 50% were confident, 50% weren't. Now I think part of the reason for this is that we've had a long time just not thinking about retirement savings, and then people joined in KiwiSaver, and there was a view almost that if I'm in KiwiSaver I'm okay, and now I think we're starting to go to the next level of thinking, saying, well, I've got superannuation, I've got KiwiSaver, but now I've got to think about, is that actually going to be enough when I retire?
Right.
So I think as people start to think about that outcome, we're seeing this, this expression of a lack of confidence that they've got enough. So more people starting to think they need to save more, they need to top up their KiwiSaver. And we've actually seen in the last year about 75,000 of our members make voluntary contributions over and above their standard employee contributions.
Okay, that's interesting.
So people are starting to think that KiwiSaver, I need to top up my KiwiSaver. And we're seeing it especially in that older age bracket, that 45 to 55-year-old age bracket.
Right, yeah. And this is the demographic, well, slightly older, that today it was revealed that they're the ones who are quite fearful about their futures. What do you make of the Financial Services Council's proposal that we adopt a KiwiSaver Plus system where contributions go to 10%?
Yeah, we've been long-term advocates of increased contributions, and we take note of the success of the Australian superannuation scheme and the fact that their balances are higher individually, and that obviously is better for retirement. We've always been concerned about the affordability aspect of it, concerned that in 2012 and in difficult economic times, there's not a lot of money left over to invest in KiwiSaver. So our view has been a very gradual increase. So we pay 0.5% a year over a 10-year period to get contributions up. And I think if we do that, employees and employers, they can manage it. And the next generation will be able to follow on from that. So we agree with the direction of it, but we just got to be very mindful of the fact that there is a serious affordability issue.
Okay. In terms of the default scheme issue being in conservative funds, that maybe not being enough for the long term, you've proposed a life stages fund instead of to replace the default fund. Now, given the fact that the markets continue to be so unstable, and then many are forecasting they're going to remain that way for about 10 years, or that's what I mean, that's a bearish view, but I have heard it quite often. So would being in a life stages fund necessarily make sense during a period of ongoing instability, and how?
Look, certainly if you had 40 years of instability, maybe not, but if we look at an example of 3 investors, and these are real life examples, each joined KiwiSaver 5 years ago. The difference between the conservative, the balanced, and the aggressive is only $60. So the balance is around $13,500. So you're only $60 worse off in an aggressive fund than a conservative fund. And if you look at what's happened in the last 5 years, we've got the GFC, we've got this European banking crisis, and I've had a recession where people have found it hard to contribute, and markets have performed pretty poorly. Right. So the last 5 years hopefully will not be a predictor of the next 40 years. So I think KiwiSaver's shown, and the fund structures have shown, that they can survive these type of markets. Right. So if you're in a life stages fund now and you've got 40 years to go, you'd probably take some confidence in the fact in the last 5 years you've done okay. Right. And markets in my time watching have never performed badly for more than 5 to 7 years. So we still think it's the right strategy, and our modelling supports that. Okay, excellent. And would you have any sort of last minute recommendations for people just doing a review on KiwiSaver as we're coming up to July, and particularly the older folks who might be withdrawing all their money and buying a batch? So think about the batch, but also think about what you need for the next 10 years to live on, and don't necessarily make a fast decision about KiwiSaver. It can stay there, it will still be managed by your provider, you'll still get good returns, and don't hesitate to kind of look at a standard withdrawal. So one thing that we think will prove very popular is we offer people can withdraw a minimum of $200 per fortnight. So if you want a supplement to your superannuation, that's a nice, elegant way of doing it. So take your time, look at the options, and then make your decision. I'm glad you raised that, because I think a lot of people might assume they just have to take all the money and run, or would worry that so they can. They certainly don't. Excellent, great. John Buddy, thank you very much for joining us. John is Managing Director of ANZ Wealth. I'm Amanda Morrell, and this has been Take an Interest in Your KiwiSaver, brought to you in association with AMP.